A frantic call at 6 o'clock a.m., a quiet home in Glyanera, and a story about a home invasion that led all of Greece to believe it was the work of a dangerous criminal gang. But just weeks later, as digital data was meticulously broken down minute by minute, the truth behind it all revealed a completely different scenario, one so shocking that even the Greek police themselves were left stunned by what they uncovered.
Τέρας, Τίνος, θα σ' απίσει φυλακή ρε καριόλι! Τίνος, θα σ' απίσει φυλακή, αλήτη!
We come to Glyanera, a residential neighborhood just outside central Athens in Greece, where Caroline Crouch, 20 years old, lived with her husband Babis Anagnostopoulos, 33, and their daughter Lydia, who was just 11 months old. Caroline was described as someone with a disciplined lifestyle and strong physical fitness, holding a black belt in kickboxing, and she was also known for her habit of caring for and protecting animals. She had adopted a husky puppy from the Marathon Animal Association when it was just 2 months old and named it Roxy. And the family also kept 4 cats. Caroline moved from England to Greece at the age of 8 and spent most of her life there. And at 15, she met Charalambos, commonly known as Babis, on the island of Alonissos, where his parents owned a vacation home and frequently stayed. And despite a 12-year age difference, their relationship gradually developed and eventually led them to live together in Glyanera. By 2018, the couple had planned to marry, during which time Babis was working as a helicopter pilot with a stable career, while Caroline had studied statistics and was considering pursuing a future in the culinary field. A few weeks after the wedding, Caroline discovered she was pregnant. But the pregnancy could not continue beyond 3 months, and she later gave birth to their daughter Lydia. And from the moment Lydia was born, Caroline's daily life largely revolved around caring for her child, something that people who knew her later confirmed. At around 6 o'clock a.m. on May 11, 2021, police received an emergency call from a house in Glyanera, later identified as the residence of Babis Anagnostopoulos and Caroline Crouch. Based on the initial information, officers were told of a serious incident filled with unusual details, and upon arriving at the scene, they discovered the husky dog named Roxy with no signs of life, found hanging by a leash on the stairway, while baby Lydia was located in a state of extreme distress beside her mother. Caroline Crouch was confirmed to have passed away at the scene, and Babis was found restrained, with his hands cuffed and his neck, mouth, and eyes wrapped in tape, prompting authorities to immediately seal off the house for investigation. In his initial statement to police, Babis Anagnostopoulos claimed that a group of unknown men had broken into the house in Glyanera during the early morning hours while the family was asleep. According to his account, the intruders entered shortly after 1:30 a.m. and remained inside the home for nearly an hour, during which time they threatened the child with a dangerous object to force the couple to reveal where cash was kept. Babis stated that he fully cooperated, handed over the money as demanded, and repeatedly begged the group not to harm his family. But despite this, he said that one of the men restrained Caroline with his hands while he himself was tied to the floor and unable to intervene. And according to his testimony, after a period of time he no longer heard any response from Caroline, after which he lost consciousness and was left at the scene until he was discovered later that morning. According to Babis's subsequent account, as he gradually regained awareness, he took advantage of a small gap in the tape covering his eyes to orient himself and locate his mobile phone, then used his nose to dial the most recent number in the call log, which belonged to a neighbor living nearby. However, because his mouth was still sealed, the person on the other end could only hear broken, indistinct sounds, and sensing that something was wrong, the neighbor immediately rushed to the house in Glyanera and, after entering, helped Babis contact the police, leading to authorities arriving at the scene shortly afterward.
Παρακαλώ. Παρακαλώ.
According to the neighbor, before police were contacted, he had heard Roxy making unusual sounds during the night, but assumed it was simply the dog reacting to encounters with the cats in the house and did not intervene. When authorities examined the home in Glyanera, they noted that a sum of cash equivalent to more than 10,000 British pounds, which had been stored inside a Monopoly game box, was missing, along with jewelry valued at approximately 20,000 British pounds. And Babis explained that the money was kept in the house because the family had recently purchased land and needed to pay workers, suggesting that information about the cash may have previously been disclosed to outsiders or known by those involved. The seriousness of the incident quickly triggering widespread concern across Greece and drawing international media attention, while officials described it as a rare type of incident for the area, and the surrounding community fell into a state of shock, organizing various forms of support for Babis and both families. Although the house in Glyanera was equipped with a security camera system, police found very little usable footage during their review, as the devices were either not functioning or had been disabled precisely during the time frame of the serious incident. From a surveillance camera located outside the immediate area, investigators identified only a single vehicle passing by the house within the period under review, which was considered a rare lead to potentially expand the investigation. However, DNA samples collected from beneath Caroline's fingernails did not yield any conclusive identification. There were no direct witnesses, and no one in the area reported hearing anything unusual apart from the neighbor who recalled hearing sounds from Roxy during the night. As a result, aside from Babis's testimony and the limited exterior camera footage, police were left with almost no concrete data to either confirm or refute the scenario that had been presented.
Έχει όσα περισσότερα μπορούσαμε να μαζέψουμε και κάθε μέρα αυτή τη στιγμή είναι 10, 15, 20 άνθρωποι στο δρόμο και ψάχνουν. Αυτό ξέρω, είναι με συνέχεια σε επικοινωνία μαζί μου όσο έχω μπορέσει να τους βοηθήσω. Αν υπάρχει κάποιος που μπορεί να τους βρει, θα τους βρουν τα παιδιά αυτά.
Ήταν τόσο σκληροί. Δηλαδή δεν καταλάβαιναν από τα παρακάλια σας, από αυτά που τους λέγατε.
Τις οικεσίες σας όλα αυτά τα πράγματα. Μας έδεσαν και από εκείνο το σημείο και μετά δεν τους είχαμε πει ήδη που είναι τα χρήματα. Δεν ξέρω.
Εσύ κατάφερες και πήρες τηλέφωνο.
Όταν συνειδητοποιήσω ότι η γυναίκα σου δεν βρίσκεται σε ζωή.
Όταν μέλησαν οι αστυνομοί. Όταν ήρθαν οι αστυνόμοι μέσα και μέλησαν και έβγαλαν από το κεφάλι μου τα δεσμά.
Και η κορούλα?
Η κορούλα μου ευτυχώς δεν έχει χτυπήσει, πήγε στο νοσοκομείο προληπτικά και ευτυχώς είναι καλά.
Information about the case spread rapidly across domestic and international media, drawing intense global attention as many closely followed the progress of the investigation. Greek authorities announced a reward of up to 300,000 euros for information leading to the arrest of those responsible, while police publicly condemned the brutality of the crime. Three days after Caroline Crouch's passing, all shops, bars, and restaurants on the island of Alonissos closed simultaneously as around 2,000 local residents gathered to bid farewell to Caroline at her funeral, a moment that reflected just how deeply connected and affected the community truly was. During the investigation, Babis took part in an auditory test intended to identify the language allegedly used by the intruders, and based on the results, he stated that it could have been Albanian or a language originating from the former Soviet region. Additionally, after reviewing around 150 images provided by police, he narrowed the list of potential suspects down to 10 individuals. At that time, authorities were also monitoring a group of Albanian nationals suspected of involvement in multiple serious home intrusion incidents in the area, characterized by coercive behavior and severe psychological harm to victims, with several similar cases recorded over the previous 6 months, prompting police to focus their resources on uncovering any possible connections. Drawing on information about this group and the list supplied by Babis, officials released details of a specific suspect, described as physically fit, approximately 5 feet 5 inches tall, with short blonde hair, a history of controlling behavior and hostility toward women. And police also considered the possibility that this individual was linked to another intrusion that had occurred 3 years earlier at the home of Babis's flight instructor, in which the instructor, then 32 years old, reported that the group involved had acted decisively and without hesitation, showing a particular tendency to exert pressure on women they perceived as vulnerable. During the same phase of the investigation, police stated that they were also searching for another individual known as Janus, who was suspected of having working ties to this group. Not long after Caroline Crouch's funeral, a man holding Georgian nationality came under the scrutiny of Bulgarian authorities after being detected near the border with invalid documents and following the collection of biological samples. The data indicated that this individual was connected to another home intrusion that had occurred only about 20 minutes away from the Glyanera residence and had taken place 4 days earlier, with the two incidents believed to share several similarities in their method of execution. However, after more extensive cross-checking, police found no direct evidence linking this man to the home of Caroline and Babis, leading to his swift removal from the official list of primary suspects. As the investigation dragged on, experts voiced concern that with time continuing to pass, the likelihood of identifying the group responsible under the initial scenario would steadily diminish. While sources within law enforcement speaking to local media indicated that the amount of evidence recovered from the house was extremely limited, with the scene suggesting it had been cleaned before the intruders left. In parallel, Babis was repeatedly summoned for interviews with police, as investigators focused on closely analyzing the timeline he had provided in an effort to extract additional details and cross-check them against the data already available.
Συλληπιτήρια, θέλετε να μας πείτε κάτι για αυτό που ζήσατε, έχει επικηρυχθεί. Μια κουβέντα.
Δεν περιγράφεται, παιδιά. Σε κανέναν, να μην τύχει. Δεν περιγράφεται, παιδιά.
Ήτανε τόσο διαλυτικές στιγμές. Τι ζητάτε τώρα, τι ζητάτε.
Να μην γίνει σε κανέναν άλλον ποτέ ξανά. Τίποτα άλλο.
Παρακαλέσατε.
Τους παρακαλέσαμε, τους είπαμε ότι έχουμε πού θα βρουν τα χρήματα.
During his cooperation with investigators, Babis provided a detailed account of their marriage. However, Carolyn's personal notes later revealed a different reality, one in which she described a family life marked by prolonged instability and constant pressure. These writings indicated that Caroline had considered leaving the relationship at a relatively early stage, specifically in July 2020, shortly after their daughter Lydia was born, when she first expressed to Babis her intention to leave, but was unable to do so due to multiple constraints tied to caring for a newborn child. In her notes and in conversations with her counselor, Caroline stated that she was experiencing prolonged pressure and had actively begun searching for a new place to live, but repeatedly hesitated because she did not want her daughter to grow up in a situation where her parents were no longer living together. According to recorded information, Babis increasingly displayed controlling tendencies, was alleged to have installed tracking software on Caroline's phone, and often accompanied her to counseling sessions. Eleni, the couple's counselor, said that Caroline had shared with her that she was looking for an apartment in central Athens so she could live with Lydia and conveniently attend a culinary school she planned to enroll in. Eleni also noted that Caroline appeared especially cautious during sessions, frequently checking doors out of fear that her husband might overhear their conversations. And although the counseling sessions took place regularly, at one point, Eleni unexpectedly received a message from Caroline requesting that the counseling be terminated, after which speculation emerged that the message may not have been sent by Caroline herself. According to Caroline Crouch's personal records, the relationship between the couple was marked by frequent arguments, with disagreements tending to escalate quickly. One diary entry read, "Today my baby turned 1 month old. It is also the day I told Babis that I want to leave. I feel absolutely terrible." Another entry stated, "I am thinking about going to my sister's place. I don't know if I can continue with Babis. I love him so much that I can't leave, even though this relationship is hurting me." It was reported that Eleni had encouraged Caroline to confide in her mother, but Caroline said she did not want to disappoint her. 38 days after the serious incident scene was discovered, during a memorial ceremony held in Caroline's honor, Babis was approached by authorities and asked to accompany them to headquarters for further questioning. Although he requested to remain until the ceremony concluded, police insisted, stating that they needed his assistance to identify an individual who had just been detained, and he was subsequently taken away from the memorial site.
He asked what's going on, and his reaction is kind of strange and awkward. He told them that the memorial isn't over and asked the officers to let him attend the memorial until the end. They refused to let him and told him for his own good to hide his cell phone and not call anyone, and that they have to leave immediately.
In reality, removing Babis from the memorial was merely a procedural measure intended to bring him to headquarters for more intensive questioning, because by that point, his account was increasingly revealing multiple inconsistencies and unexplained gaps. When placed alongside Caroline's personal records, describing a relationship marked by prolonged instability, combined with the absence of any independent witnesses or visual data confirming the presence of an outside group, investigators gradually ruled out the gang hypothesis and narrowed their focus to a single individual. Analysis of data from Caroline's smartwatch showed that at around 4:00 a.m., she experienced a period of intense physical or psychological stress lasting 6 minutes, a finding that did not align with the timeline Babis had previously reported for when the incident occurred. At the same time, data from his phone recorded repeated movement up and down the stairs over several hours during the exact period he claimed to have been restrained and unable to move. After 8 hours of intense interrogation and being confronted with all the evidence police had gathered, Babis finally broke down.
This is Babis Ananiastopoulos, comforting his mother-in-law this week. Her daughter, his wife, murdered just a few weeks before. But now police say that he was the murderer who nearly concealed his crime. Caroline's murder in May shocked Greece. Her husband describing a violent gang who he said had tied up the parents, threatened their baby child and then killed his wife. In the days after, Ananiastopoulos cut a bereaved and broken figure. But police now say that the story about a gang was all a lie, that the husband murdered his wife because she threatened to leave him, and that he then staged the crime scene. It's claimed that data from wearable fitness trackers showed that Caroline died hours earlier than her husband said, and also that Ananiastopoulos was walking around the house when he claimed to have been tied up.
The examination of some evidence, and especially the digital evidence that we'd confiscated from the site, gave us some clues, especially the evidence that showed movement of objects, in particular the husband's phone, during the same time he had testified that he was tied up.
For weeks, Greece has been shocked by the spectre of a violent, murderous gang. If the police are right, then this horrendous crime instead comes down to the fury of just one man.
During questioning, Babis admitted that the story of a home invasion was entirely fabricated and that he himself had constructed the whole scenario, including staging the scene and carrying out the serious acts that led to Caroline's passing, as well as the loss of the family's pet, Roxy. Police later stated that suspicions toward Babis had arisen as early as their initial arrival at the scene on the morning of May 11, 2021, after observing behavior and reactions that did not align with the circumstances. Petros Tseferis, the police chief in charge of the case, confirmed that this doubt had existed from the beginning. But at that stage, investigators lacked decisive evidence. Babis had exploited intense media attention to reinforce a false narrative, leading the public, authorities, and even Caroline's own family to believe in a scenario that did not reflect the true nature of what had occurred. In addition to Caroline expressing her desire to end the marriage and take Lydia away, investigators also examined the possibility of another motive tied to financial pressure, as Babis's high-spending lifestyle raised serious questions about its long-term sustainability. According to case records, the couple had taken a luxury vacation to Dubai, spent approximately 47,000 British pounds on land, and planned to build a house with an estimated cost of 140,000 British pounds. Just 1 week before Caroline's passing, her mother had also transferred 20,000 euros to Babis. Furthermore, some sources suggested that Babis may have been involved in illicit helicopter transport activities, potentially generating income to support this lifestyle. Caroline's father, David Crouch, stated that he believed these suspicions were not unfounded and emphasized that his daughter was someone with clear moral boundaries who would not have remained silent. Based on the consolidated timeline and the digital data collected, investigators reconstructed the sequence of events that unfolded in the early morning hours. According to the file, at some point during the evening, Caroline had texted a close friend expressing her intention to leave Babis. Phone data also confirmed that she attempted to book a hotel room to stay overnight with her daughter Lydia. At around 12:35 a.m., the living room camera inside the Glyanera house recorded Babis with Lydia while he was sending messages to Caroline, who was upstairs at the time. By 1:20 a.m., data showed that Babis removed the memory card from the home's internal camera system, after which the two continued exchanging messages for more than 2 hours, with content reflecting sustained tension. At approximately 4:00 a.m., Caroline's smartwatch registered her in a resting state. However, just 1 minute later, the device detected a sudden spike in biological activity indicating intense physical or psychological stimulation. And roughly 11 minutes after that, the watch stopped recording any biological signals at all. Data indicated that at 4:05 a.m., Caroline's heart rate surged abnormally for a brief period before ceasing entirely, a timeline that did not align with Babis's initial statements. After that point, Babis placed Lydia beside her mother, who no longer showed signs of life, in an effort to create a misleading scene and reinforce the home invasion narrative. Investigative data showed that the moment of Caroline's passing did not align with what Babis had initially reported, creating a window of time long enough for him to rearrange the scene by disturbing items inside the house to simulate signs of a search. During that same period, the family's pet, Roxy, also lost her life, and was hung on the staircase. At around 6:00 a.m., nearly 2 hours after the key time markers identified through digital data, Babis finally made the call reporting the incident. According to medical confirmation and analysis from the smartwatch, Caroline experienced a period of intense biological response before all indicators ceased entirely, showing that her body entered a state of extreme stress in her final minutes. During the trial, Babis Anagnostopoulos initially described his actions in a minimizing manner, claiming that it was merely an embrace while the two were lying in bed and that Caroline had leaned away, prompting him to hold her until she stopped responding. After which he stated that he attempted to wake her without success and only then realized the consequences of what had happened. In later statements, Babis continued to alter key details, saying that he had pushed Caroline onto the bed and pressed her head into a pillow until she lost consciousness, only afterward recognizing that the situation had gone beyond his control. The justification he offered was that it was an impulsive act intended to protect his daughter Lydia, while also accusing Caroline of using harsh language and exerting psychological pressure on both him and the child. He maintained that fabricating the false narrative was done to avoid arrest and to protect his daughter. However, prosecutors rejected these arguments in their entirety, asserting that the sequence of events pointed to prior preparation based on the fact that the camera system had been disabled and the memory card removed before the incident occurred. Along with data from Caroline Crouch's smartwatch showing that she was in a resting state at the moment the incident began. On June 18th, Babis Anagnostopoulos was formally charged with 2 serious offenses, including causing the passing of another person with prior preparation while in a stable state of awareness, and inflicting severe harm on an animal. In addition, he faced 2 lesser charges related to falsely attributing responsibility to others and repeatedly providing untrue information to authorities. During the legal proceedings, one attorney from the defense team requested to withdraw and told the media that he did not wish to continue participating in the case for personal reasons. Meanwhile, Babis was placed in pre-trial detention at Korydallos, Greece's high-security detention facility, to await the next stages of judicial proceedings in accordance with the law. On May 16, 2022, roughly 1 month after the trial began, the panel of judges unanimously found Babis Anagnostopoulos criminally responsible for causing the passing of Caroline Crouch while in a stable state of awareness, and also determined that he had committed severe harm against the family's pet, along with offenses related to providing false information and filing untrue reports with authorities. Under the ruling, Babis was sentenced to life imprisonment, accompanied by an additional 10 years related to the offense against the animal, and a fine of 20,000 euros. Furthermore, he was ordered to serve a total of 11 years and 6 months in prison under a supplementary sentence for deceiving authorities. After Babis Anagnostopoulos filed an appeal, on September 29, 2023, the Mixed Court of Appeal in Athens unanimously upheld the entirety of the first instance verdict, thereby reaffirming the life sentence, adding 11 years and 6 months of imprisonment, and adjusting the total fine to 21,000 euros. Caroline Crouch's passing sparked a powerful international reaction, particularly in Greece, where numerous marches took place carrying messages calling for an end to harmful behavior within the family. Against a backdrop of statistics showing that serious incidents in domestic settings across Greece had increased significantly since the first lockdown in March 2020. The case forced society to re-examine its approach to issues affecting women, the role of the media, and the responsibilities of public authorities. Maria Alvanou, a criminologist and lawyer advocating for women's rights, stated that many cases in which women lose their lives often stem from long-standing family problems that were not addressed in time. On the family's side, Caroline's parents, Susan and David, took legal steps to completely separate the name of Babis Anagnostopoulos from the memory of their daughter, including modifying the inscription on her memorial to read only mother and daughter. The Crouch family was later granted custody of Lydia, while Babis's parents were denied shared custody but were still permitted visitation for 5 days each month. And according to sources, despite everything that transpired, both families have continued to maintain a cooperative relationship in order to ensure the most stable conditions possible for Lydia's upbringing. As this case comes to a close, it becomes clear that behind what appeared to be a stable family life was a prolonged chain of unresolved instability that went unnoticed and unaddressed, ultimately leading to an irreversible outcome. A stark reminder that serious problems within close relationships should never be taken lightly, because silence and hesitation can sometimes come at the cost of the greatest losses. Thank you for listening to today's story with True Crime Documentary. If you have any thoughts or emotions after following this case, please leave a comment as a way to honor the victim. Don't forget to share the video so more people can see it and reflect on the lessons it holds. And if you're interested in in-depth analysis of real crime cases, subscribe to the channel and hit like to support True Crime Documentary. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next story.